All right, well, welcome, guys. Hello, everybody. How are you? Good. Today we want to welcome Jon, and I'm sorry, you're going to have to pronounce your last name for me because I'm not even going to try it.
No, it's Passavant.
Passavant.
Yeah.
Jon is the CEO of Start Up Waco. I'll give him a second and let him kind of explain what Start Up Waco is. But Jon, welcome.
Yeah,
thank you for being here with us.
It's great to be here.
So before we kind of get into the topic for today, will you kind of tell us a little bit about you, what you do, your background, your career, where you started, how you got to where you are today, and even tell us a little bit about Start Up Waco.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to be with you guys this morning. I know it's first day back after spring break. It's tough, but it also means we're on the downward hill till the end of the year, so that's a good thing. So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I went to school there, got a degree in business, and then I moved to New York when I was 22. And the reason for that was I wanted to pursue a career in advertising and in doing commercials. And so I basically moved there because New York is the best place in the country to do that. And so I got an agent and I moved to New York and I started working in commercials and working in advertising. And so as I did that, what was interesting about that, I didn't realize it, but doing that is kind of like running your own business. You're kind of in business for yourself, running it. And as I got into it, it ended up a number of years doing that. And then I started getting interested in how a business gets started. New York was very interesting at that time. There was a lot of tech and technology that was moving, companies that were moving into New York from Silicon Valley. This is right around the time when Instagram was getting started and when all of these different companies were coming in and being starting in different parts of the country. So in my spare time, I was getting interested in it. And so I met some people and putting myself out there and getting to know what some companies were doing and how they were starting. Invested in a few companies, meaning I put my own money in and my own time in to help these companies kind of start and get figured out. And then did that for a while. Ended up starting my own business outside of that, which was it was in the fashion space. We made leather goods. So we made backpacks and briefcases and high-end wallets and things like that. And then we also created a software that would allow manufacturing plants communicate with brands better to determine what they want. So I did that for about 5 years, and I liked entrepreneurship. I liked sort of understanding how to bring something into existence that didn't exist before and all the different things that are associated with that. And my wife, who is from Waco, we were having our third kid. Yeah. And then an opportunity, I learned about Startup Waco. And what Startup Waco is an organization that is here in Waco that exists to help entrepreneurs start their businesses and grow their businesses. So you may not have even known that exists. It's kind of it's something that is pretty common around the country because you realize if one thing is for sure, oftentimes when somebody starts a business, they don't really know all the things that they're getting into. If you think about all the stuff that you're learning here and how a business is put together, these aren't things that just somebody starts a business knowing how to do. Usually they just say, hey, I want to make money, or I want to create something, or I want to be famous, or I want to whatever your reasons are for doing it, or I like to cook, so I want to cook really well for people, or I like to design, so I want to create cool clothes and apparel. There's all sorts of reasons why people start businesses, but then you get into it and you realize that there's a whole lot of other things around it that are required for it to be successful. And that's for every single business that's ever started. So I like that aspect of understanding the types of things that are necessary and then being a part of helping people get them started and doing them.
That's awesome. So that's cool. So talking about that, you're talking about all the elements that go into a business. So today's topic actually is the elements of a business plan.
Yep.
So some questions to get us going. So in your experience working with startups and entrepreneurs, how crucial is it for them to have a business plan?
Yeah. Well, a few things I think are pretty common across the board. And that is, as I was alluding to before, most times when entrepreneurs start a business, they don't start by saying, hey, I really want to get into the paperwork and the details of starting this business. They usually just say, hey, I want to do the thing that my business is going to be about. And so a lot of times it's pretty common that most entrepreneurs will just come in and say, hey, I'm really good at this thing, or I have a vision for this thing, or I want to sell this type of thing. And that's their motivation for getting into starting a business. When the reality is, it really is the coming together of thoughtful planning along with a great idea and what you want to do that creates a business that can be workable. So for a lot of businesses, it's like just helping them understand the necessity and the importance of having a business plan. And for some, it's sort of helping them refine it once they kind of say, okay, I think I know what it means.
So they have this idea, and then you can kind of help develop it from there.
Yeah, and I think, like, look, no one is buying a business plan, right? I mean, the business plan is there to help you figure out what your business does, because you'd think that it's just, well, I'm going to make this thing, or I want to do this thing, or I want to help this business do whatever. If you're a restaurant, it's pretty obvious what people are paying you for. They're paying you for food and an experience. But your business could have great food, and it could have a great experience, and it could still fail really, really bad because you don't have the proper structure around it. And the business plan is just the start of that structure. If nothing else, it's most important for you as an entrepreneur, for anyone as an entrepreneur, to come in and understand what your business actually is. It helps you think through customers, helps you think through costs, and it helps you plan ahead for the future so you actually have the best chance to be successful. Most businesses, I will say, if you don't have a business plan, which is just the start of understanding what your business is, it's just sort of an identity statement of all the different pieces of your business. It's very, very difficult to be successful without the proper planning that goes in. And it'll just help you become a better business person as well by understanding the elements that go into making a business successful.
So let's talk a little bit about some of those specific elements. So if we look, there's kind of, how many did I count? I think 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elements to a business plan. So first off is an executive summary.
Mm-hmm.
So what really should the executive summary or the elevator pitch of a business plan look like?
Yeah, and I would say this. When you learn about a business plan, it's kind of like, you got these elements and these structures, but this is really just the framework for you being able to articulate and talk about and understand what your business is. And just the exercise of putting together a business plan is going to help you refine your thinking on what your business is. Now, this is true for a business. This is true if you're putting together a movie. This is true if you're putting together any type of activity. Just understanding the elements of what that is important for it to work. And so that's what a business plan is meant to do. It's just meant to define what your business idea actually is and all the elements that you're maybe not thinking about because as an entrepreneur, you're usually just focused on the thing that you want to be doing. So for some of the elements, like the executive summary, it's kind of a big kind of somewhat imposing phrase to just say, hey, this is a high level description of what my business is. Here's another thing that I found to be true. Whenever you're starting your own business, no matter what the business is, you're always going to be trying to convince people about the value of your business. You're always sort of selling your idea because most people aren't always looking for the thing that you have. And this is why when you talk about somebody being an entrepreneur, the idea of grit, the idea of somebody who's got all the things against them, but they find a way to fight through and be successful in it is really true, because no one is asking any of us here in this room to start a business. Nobody right now is looking for whatever the thing is that you have to offer. No one's really asking for it. You've got to show people sometimes that what you have, what you can give them, is actually meaningful to them. And at the end of the day, creating something successful is just about one simple thing. It's about making people happy. Can you solve a problem for people? That's another way of saying, can you make them happy? Why does Michael Jordan make so much money, even now after he's done playing? This is a simple rule of basic economics, is that he makes people happy. He's made people happy his entire career. He's been a part of things that make people happy. And so there's a financial incentive and reward for that thing. But every single one of those places, you could say, hey, I want to be a great athlete. You could put together what would effectively be a business plan for you being a great athlete. It's just a description of the pieces of the thing that you're doing that you need to be successful. And so we've put these structures together, but I would always tell an entrepreneur, like, look, it's not so much about these structures. It's about putting together these things that force you to think about what you want to do in a way that maybe you wouldn't naturally think about it. Everybody would love to be a great athlete. Not a lot of people love structure and practice. But that's exactly, if you had to put a business plan together for how to be a great athlete, you would have things like, how do you structure your practice? What do you do? What are the things that you need to work at? It's the same thing with the business. You might have a great idea for a business, but the business plan helps you define, hey, what are the things that I need to put together that I wouldn't naturally say that I need to know about for this to be successful? So we talk about the pieces. The executive summary is just a high level picture of it. It's just basically you describing, here's what my business is, here's what it does, here's the problem that it solves, or here's how it makes people happy. I find it hard sometimes. The language of like solve a problem is like kind of confusing because anything creative based isn't really solving a problem. Like nobody is looking for a newer thing, or nobody is looking for a new creative expression of something. It's not a problem that they have. But if you flip that around and say, hey, I'm either solving a problem or I'm making people happy, they can be really happy with a new design or a new look. I mean, some of the creative based businesses are the most successful businesses because they make people really, really happy. So it would just be a way of phrasing it. The executive summary is just a high level. If somebody said, hey, tell me about your business and what you're doing, this is the thing that you give them. It's short. Nobody likes reading a lot of stuff. I think standard would maybe be a page or two. If somebody comes in and says, hey, would you take a look at my business? And I say, send me the summary. Like, so just tell me about it. And they send me 10 pages of stuff. It's just like, no, like I don't
wants to read that.
And I don't read it. I'll be like, take it, boil it down into a page, and then let's talk. Because it helps them refine the idea. It helps them get really, really clear on the thing that they're doing. And it helps me understand that the entrepreneur understands what is it about their business that is actually they think is going to work. What is it about their business that's solving a problem or making people happy, which are two ways of saying the same thing. So that's all the executive summary is. That's where it starts. If just getting you to say, hey, here's what I want to do, and here's why I want to do it, and here's why I think it'll make people happy. Here's why I think it'll help solve this problem. And that's kind of the executive summary where it starts. Everything else kind of just reinforces what that summary says. All the other pieces kind of fit in. This is just the one thing that you get people to hook. And whether it's a customer that you're selling to, or it's an investor that you're selling to, or it's a bank that you're selling to, this is like a helpful piece for you just to go through and say, hey, I understand what my business is. I understand what I want to do. Because people got to be taking risks on you and making bets on you, and they're either giving you money as an investor, or they're lending you money as a bank, or your friends and family are putting their money in to help see it go. And so you got to have that high level description of what it is.
So the executive summary basically is gets the people interested in reading more, going further into the other elements of a business plan.
Absolutely.
So once you kind of get that thing going of saying, hey, this is what I'm doing, then they can go in and then they can go further into going on to say the next step, which is the company story, telling about the business, the history of the business. So how can a startup effectively convey that mission, that vision, their value in the plan?
Yeah. So look, I think most businesses, when they get started, they're born out of a passion that somebody has. If you say, here's why I want to do this thing, there's probably something about it that's tied to your personal story. And so whenever you're putting a plan together, and again, the reason why you need a business plan is, first of all, for you as the entrepreneur. It's so that you understand, this is what it is that I do. This is what my business is. This is what it stands for. This is how we make money. This is our hope for where we want it to go. And all these pieces just support that. The summary is just a big picture of all of that. And the company story is like, you want to get somebody, invested and excited about what you're doing. So telling a little bit about the story, the reason why the company exists, not just here's what we do, but here's why we think it's important for this company to exist. Again, it's just like, I can't, you've got to, from the start, everyone that you've seen that started a successful business has started it when nobody else was looking for it, when nobody wanted it to be there. Nobody was begging them to start a business. They said, hey, I've got this thing that I want to do, and I want to do it, and here's why I want to do it. That's what this part of the business plan would be. And this is why, if you look at the list of the most successful people in history, they're always entrepreneurs, because to break through and to create something out of nothing is the hardest thing to do. And so the people that generate that value, that sort of see something that doesn't exist and say, hey, I think I could in some small way make somebody happier than they are, or I could in some small way solve this problem, even a small problem. And I can solve that for a lot of people, which again is another way of saying making them happier. Then, they get really rewarded for that. You can start a business for that. You can sell the business. You make money, but you also, it's a very creative and fulfilling thing. So the story is just a way of telling, here's why we exist and why we want to do this thing.
And so then once we get past we get the executive summary, we get the company story going on, but we'll also go and then talk about, what's our target market. So that's where market research, which is the next part of the business plan, comes in. So why is understanding the target market and the competition crucial for success?
Yes. I mean, think of any business that you could start. It could be clothes. It could be, food. It could be a service. Whatever business you think it could be art. It could be anything. The reality is there's already a business likely doing that exact thing. So, understanding what options are already out there is really, really important. Because then that helps you refine your product or service even more. So if you look at, say, okay, I want to start a lawn care business. Well, why do you want to start a lawn care business? Well, I mean, look, it might be that you just love using machinery or you love making yards beautiful. That's possible. But it could be that, hey, I want to serve people and I want to make money. So I want to make money at it and do it. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with that as a motivation. The reality is there's lots of companies that are lawn care companies that are serving that exact need. So it makes you a better business person and a sharper plan to understand what is it that those companies are doing and how can I do it slightly differently to help people more. So really, it's like you're not creating anything new. Lawn care is not a new business idea. There's nothing revolutionary about it. But your company can start to become revolutionary by looking at what currently exists and the gaps that are there and say, well, I want to do it this way. I want to do it this way. I want to make that person that much happier. It could just be like, I'll take another example of like from food. If you think of Chick-fil-A, for example. So, fried chicken sandwiches, like nothing new about that, right? I mean, like there's literally a dozen places you could go to in town to do it. And so it begs the question, like, why is that chain one of the largest, most successful food chains in the country? And they looked at it, and again, I don't know if they understood all this when they started the company or not, but the reason why it's so successful is they look at it, it's honestly not because the food is just that much better. I mean, maybe that's my opinion, but it's like, it's fine, right? But there's nothing like revolutionary about the food. But there is something revolutionary in how they address the whole idea of what fast food experience should be like. And they really changed the experience for a lot of people of what it's like, mostly through hospitality. So if you talk to the people at Chick-fil-A, and I know this because I have a friend who's just going through this process of opening up his own store, is that everything about their business is structured on hospitality. So they are really a hospitality company that just sells chicken so that they can do more hospitality. They realize that the reason people are giving them money, the food is fine, but the hospitality is what keeps them coming back. And so everything about their business is structured that way. They don't franchise in a traditional way because they realize if you just franchise, well, then the owner is incentivized to open up as many restaurants as possible because he makes more money that way. He or she makes more money that way. And what does that do? Well, that just makes, like, if you're just doing more and more and the goal is volume, well, then you're not really focused on how can I make each individual experience better. So instead of franchise, Chick-fil-A puts up all the money. If somebody goes to them and say, hey, I want to own a Chick-fil-A restaurant. Great, there's a long line of people. It doesn't cost you $1. Chick-fil-A will give you millions of dollars to start one of their restaurants. They'll build the building for you. They'll set up all the channels to get the food. They'll give you all the manuals, all the help. They'll pay for everything. And all you do as the owner is split the profits with them. And the reason they do that is because they realize that they want to have people that are, it's a privilege to get in there. There's a list that is years and years and years if you even get accepted to be on the list. You could have the most successful. So the friend that I have right now has a big time job in New York City. And he wants to leave that job to go run a Chick-fil-A restaurant because of how great the culture is and how much money he can make doing that. And he loves hospitality. And even though he's probably one of the most qualified applicants they've ever had, he's been on the waiting list and going through a series of interviews for over 3 years. And because that's part of their process, is vetting people to come in and to do it, so that they know, that they understand that, like, hey, this is about hospitality. This is not just about food.
They want to maintain that
They
image.
want to maintain it. And so they as they grow up, somebody who finally owns that restaurant realizes, like, oh, okay, this is how this gets successful. And it's been really, really successful. So everyone does it differently. That's a way that Chick-fil-A took fast food and sort of changed it. And they understood that, like, it's just a different experience there than it is when you go to McDonald's or Wendy's or something else. And it's not about the food. It really is about the hospitality. So thinking about who else is making the things that you want to make and understanding how you can be different is a way that you can take something that is already out there that people don't need you for, and you can actually create something unique in that space.
And that's all part of that market research and understanding your target market as well as your competition.
That's right.
So you've got to then you move on. You've got to talk about your team.
Yeah.
Who's on your team?
Yeah.
How is your company organized? What's its management? So what aspects of a company's structure and their team are essential to showcase in a business plan?
So one thing that is true everywhere in the world is that no single person can start a business and run a business. It's never happened in the history of the world. It's never, maybe you only hear about one person, but the reality is that it's always multiple people that are coming around making that happen. When you dig into the story of how, somebody started, how, Jeff Bezos started Amazon, or Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook, it's always that they went around to other people, and other people saw their vision and their dream and said, okay, yeah, we'll come in and we'll help you. So the point of having a team is really to say that, like, hey, you might have the idea and you might be able to do some parts of it, but how do you bring people around you to do the things that you can't do? How do you find somebody that loves doing something that you either don't know how to do or really don't like doing? And the team, I would look at it in two levels. Like, I would look at it as, who do you have advising and informing what you're doing, and then who do you have helping to actually execute it? So if you came to me and said, hey, I wanted to start a clothing company, we make making t-shirts or something. Okay, well, lots of t-shirts out there. My first question would be, well, how is yours different? How is your t-shirt making people happier or solving a problem? Well, we don't have, this particular area doesn't have t-shirts, or t-shirts aren't made in this way, we make it faster, whatever it is, or they're not this design and style. You can be anything that makes you different, but understanding what's different. And then I would say, well, okay, who do you have in your life, or who does your company have in its corner that's actually made t-shirts before? Because you haven't, and most people that start businesses have probably never done anything in that space before. Everyone starts somewhere. The benefit is, if you get people on your team, either through advisors or people helping you do it, well, then you don't have to do everything. You can ask those people for support. So whether it's an investor, whether it's a bank, whether it's your friends or family giving you money, they're going to want to know that someone's involved in this business that has done it before, that can help guide you as the entrepreneur through it. So in a way, that should be a relief. It should be like, hey, all right, starting a business sounds great if you can do it, but it sounds like a ton of work and really hard and challenging to get to that point, and it is. The point is, you don't have to do it alone. No one has ever done it alone. Everyone relies on the people around them or their ability to convince people to come in and help them build it and do it. So when it comes to the business plan, the team is just saying, hey, here's who I have in our corner. Here's who we have thinking about this, working on this. And I would do things like, find the best. And this is actually a great thing that Start Up Waco does with entrepreneurs. We'll meet somebody and I'll say, okay, like, who do you have in your team? And let's say it's a restaurant. And they'll say, well, we've got, I don't know, my friend and my sister help me, and that's it. I'm like, okay, great. That's great. But now you need somebody in the restaurant business who sort of come in, and maybe all they are is an advisor. And you could go to somebody and say, hey, could you sit on an advisory board of my company and just help? And can I come to you every other month with a list of questions and ask your support and your help? I've had people with no time at all be willing to give time to somebody who just says, hey, can I have you as part of my advisory committee on this, and you can help me with my decisions. Most people are very open and willing with their time. I hope that's what part of this program can be, so that you guys actually have a list of and a group of successful entrepreneurs that have been in this room with you, that have met you, that whenever you say, hey, I want to start this thing, you have a group of people that you can go to who have done it, that have been successful, whether they've started a podcast network, whether they've started a bookstore or multiple restaurants, whether they're in human resources or have some type of expertise, or somebody who runs an organization like mine. We're here because we're saying, like, hey, we understand that no one can do it by themselves. So the sooner you realize that, the better, and the better chance of success you have. And there are people here in Waco that are willing to come alongside you and say, hey, we'll help give that advice. We'll help give you that advice and give you that help, answer those questions for you so you don't have to make mistakes. If you don't have that, then honestly, I would not even start whatever venture you have until you have good people around you that can help you, that you can rely on. So if you don't have anyone who's done the thing that you want to do, I'm telling you, just walk into Startup Waco and we will find somebody to come alongside you and help you do it. Whatever your dream is, whether it's art, whether it's in sports, whether it's in media, whether it's in fashion, whether it's in a service-based business. We've got a lot of people with great experience that would love to help anyone here to go through and be on that advisory. So, and then how cool would it be? Let's say this is where it gets important. You put your team in, and so this is the question of who are we going to work with? How are we going to get this thing done? Now, I keep coming back to some of the same examples, but let's say you just want to make t-shirts. Well, you don't need a lot of people to make t-shirts. Maybe you could just do them yourself here. And okay, I want to start a business selling t-shirts. My goal is to sell a certain number of t-shirts, make a certain amount of money. I don't want to work a job over the summer, so I want to make something and sell it. Okay, well, figure out your costs, figure out what you're doing. We'll get into that. But I need somebody that knows how to make t-shirts. Well, somebody that I can ask questions to of like, hey, what am I going to learn? What mistakes am I going to make? And so that's where we can help. You just come in and we'll pair you with somebody who's done it. And they said, okay, here's what you need to do. So let's say then you got to borrow some money, or you need someone to come in and you say, here's my business plan, here's my summary, here's what I'm doing. Oh, and by the way, I've got the owner of, Hole in the Roof, the largest t-shirt maker in the city that does X millions of dollars a year. And that person is sitting on an advisory board for my company helping me do it. You see how that totally shifts the perspective? It's now not just you trying to do it. You've now got people around you that have done it. That makes everyone feel a lot more comfortable that you're going to actually be successful. So the team, I would use the team in your business plan strategically. It's not just a list of who's working on it. It's an opportunity for you to go out and ask somebody with real world experience to come on board and help you actually do the thing.
Cool. So we've got about 10 minutes. So we've got three elements we've got to cover real quick. So we've got through the executive summary, the company story, market research, your organization, your management. Next is the thing that you're selling itself, the service or the product. So what makes a strong description of a company's offering in a business plan?
Yeah, I think the best, if it had to be one thing, it would be your understanding of what is unique about your product or service. Anything can be a business. Literally anything you enjoy doing can be a business and can make you a lot of money if it's done well.
But the quick question is then, what is it about your product, your service that sets it apart from your competition?
That's right. So it doesn't have to be wildly unique. It doesn't have to be this thing that no one's ever seen before. It could just be an iteration or a flip on something that already exists, but you want to do it in a different way. So I would just use those questions of what problem am I solving, or how am I making people happy, as your sort of guiding, force of like, okay, what should my product actually be? One other story of that is, lots of stories of people who thought they were doing one thing and ended up doing something else. There was a guy, we do a lot at the at research-based stuff, and there was a guy who was creating a type of glue. It was like this silicone glue that he wanted to create, and he was a chemist, and he put all the chemistry stuff together. And he ended up doing it, and it was like not working great. It was like this weird texture that wasn't really solid, but it wasn't smooth enough and easy enough. And so he ended up, it just wasn't working. And then he realized, like, well, wait a second, this is like not that great for an industrial glue, but it actually is a really interesting base for like a toothpaste. And so they began just swapping out the chemical components of that, and it made a new type of toothpaste that was like easier than whatever people were using. This was a long time ago, but like, you don't know what you're discovering, and you've got to be flexible with your product or service in the course of doing it, so that you have just basically like whatever you want to do, make sure that it's meeting people's needs the best, and be flexible that it could pivot and become something that you never thought it could be. Like maybe you want to make t-shirts, but maybe you realize that people don't they don't know how to make t-shirts. And so maybe you create that process and all of a sudden you become a supplier of t-shirts for people doing t-shirts. There's lots of ways that businesses can pivot to become something else. It's just staying true to that. How am I solving a problem, or how am I making people happy?
And then you got to figure out how are you going to market your product.
Yeah.
Going along, once you understand your target market, you understand what your product is, how are they, how it's different from your competitor.
Yeah.
How then do you get it out? How do you market it? What's the marketing strategy? Which is, of course, the next step in the plan. So how do you get that marketing strategy out? Or how do you structure that marketing strategy to reach your target audience?
Yeah. Marketing is just letting people know you exist. That's it. So, I mean, a lot of times entrepreneurs make the mistake. You do so much work to create the website, to open the restaurant, to do the thing. I mean, that is like your full-time job times 3, working hard, doing it all. But then you realize that no one knows you exist. No one knows you're out there. So thinking through the plan of how do you get your product or service in front of people is what the marketing plan is all about.
Can you cover the door, please? So marketing is letting people know what it is.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
Is knowing about your business, what your product is, what you're offering, and everything. Last part of the business plan is probably the most important part, because this is where people think about this is their bottom line.
Yeah.
The financial projections.
Yeah.
So what key financial aspects should be considered and projected in a business plan?
Well, you guys, I saw some of the curriculum that you work on in this class, and it's really excellent. Understanding unit economics of how much things cost. With a business in its identity has one purpose, and that's to make money. So understanding what your profit is going to be is really the basis of everything. What is a profit? A profit is just the money you take in minus the amount that it costs you to actually make that thing and run the company. So you got to have an understanding of what that is. But here's what's really cool about being an entrepreneur. No one gets to tell you what success means, but you're the one that sets it. So you could say, look, I want to create this thing and I want to make X amount of dollars a year so I don't have to get a job. Or you can say, I want experience in doing this thing. So I'm not about making the most money with this. I'm about getting experience at it. So you get to set whatever those goals are. No one can tell you it's a good goal or a bad goal. All that the financial statements does is basically helps you puts a structure to understand how much money you need to get started, how much money you're going to make, and then basically helps you set goals for like, okay, if I want to make $10,000 in a summer, how many t-shirts do I have to sell to get to that $10,000 minus the cost that it makes me to do that? So maybe you got to, if you want $10,000 in profit, maybe that means that you've got to sell $15,000 that summer in t-shirts because it costs you $5,000 to make them all and ship them and market them and everything. So that's what the financial plan just takes it out of your head and puts it on paper. And again, this is not, it takes some learning, but again, there's a lot of people that can help work through it. Everyone kind of has to work through it. But it just gives you a structure to do that.
And that's exactly what the business plan is helps create that structure.
That's right.
So you know what you're doing, who you're targeting,
that's right.
what you're offering.
That's right.
What's your motivation that drives you to do whatever it is you're doing.
That's right.
So as long as you've got you cover all of those elements in a business plan, then as you said, when you can sell it to an investor, you can sell it to somebody who's helping you to get your business, to keep your business going.
That's right. And I saw you have a Canvas on there. Is that a...
Canvas is our learning management system.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Well, there's something called a business model canvas.
BMC. Yeah, we've actually kind of talked briefly about that. Yeah.
So that's a really great tool that just kind of works you through, helps you answer each of those elements in like a one sentence. So you don't have to spend a lot of time to just understand, like, is this something that I even want to do or not? So it just gives you a canvas, and you can download a template online. It's free, or you got them. And it just helps you answer those questions quickly. So then you're like, all right, is this actually something
that's viable? Can this work?
Yeah. And it's like, maybe it'll work, but it doesn't have the goals that you want. And so setting those goals and doing it is kind of what this whole, even if no one ever reads the business plan but you, it's still an incredibly vital part of the journey of entrepreneurship, because it helps you refine your thoughts and understand exactly what's important and how to do it.
Well, and I think you touched on something too, is that, sometimes you have to pivot, which means your business plan has to be flexible. It has to be kind of a living document, so that you can make those pivots where you need to. If it comes down to it,
which more than likely will
happen.
Yeah.
So we only got a minute or two, but does anybody have any questions for Jon about business plans or anything else that he does with Start Up Waco?
Yeah. What's that? Sorry.
How many people have you helped?
Have we helped? I mean, yeah. So I've been there about 4.5 years, but I mean, it's in the hundreds. Like we've got a bunch of people. We have businesses coming through every week. There's a lot of businesses starting up in Waco. Some of them you'd be expected. Some of them aren't. We work with. We run the NIL collective for the Baylor student athletes, and so we help those athletes start businesses. And a lot of them are very specific to athletics. But everything from restaurants to software businesses to apparel and fashion, we kind of have helped all of them, and it all kind of comes down to refining aspects of this. But there is a lot of help and support in Waco for entrepreneurs that are asking for it.
Any other questions?
I just want to make it clear, it's available to all of you.
Yeah.
All of our resources.
That's right.
Yep. So, all right. Well, Jon, thank you so much for being here. Please give him a round of applause. Yeah. And thank you, sir.